Hello everyone, and welcome to the third event of She Makes of Wool Mondays. So Wool Mondays is lab-to-lab research. So there are many labs all over the world that they are together researching about the topic of wool, and in specifically under 3 projects. So I will start sharing my screen. Many of you have already participated in the previous ones. And also this is a very nice space and moment for the labs to exchange all their research and findings in between us. So I will share my screen. So as I said that this is the third event. In the first event, we had local ecosystem mapping. So we understand what are the actors and the stakeholders for creating local and circular connections and synergies for activating wool ecosystems. In the second part, we had the designing with wool and especially the natural dyeing. And today, which is the third part, which is interesting because actually we are not making with the wool, but we are making the tools and the machines that they are necessary for working with the wool. And this project is called the Little Wool Factory, open source tools for creating small micro factories, las pequeñas fábricas de lana, small factories of wool that can be replicated in many places all over the world. So we will have an overview of our findings, which means that you will be able to see which machines and which tools we have found on our research and that we were able to replicate. The Little Wool Factory is creating a database testing open access tools and machines that can be made in fab labs, textile labs, atelier, maker spaces, and workshops for creating laboratory scale microfactories, reviving lost skills, and enabling local wool ecosystems. It is based on the Fabricademy module open source hardware from fibers to fabrics. And why little? So why should we think of little? First of all, because small is beautiful, and technology with a human face is in fact possible, and it is viable, and that it reintegrates the human being with his skillful hands and creative brain into the productive process. This is from Schumacher. It serves production by the masses instead of mass production. And this is also the concept of the Fab Labs, no? That we are bringing back productivity in the cities or in the villages or in the areas where these places that they are producing, they can be activating and bringing people together to make things locally. And also because it is convivial. Little, small can be convivial. Convivial tools can empower users, give them the opportunity to self-learn and keep the balance between self and ready-made work and between human activities and the biosphere. So it is also combining this duality of craft and technology. So it brings the hand making, all the old heritage and tradition, but also enabling this with new technologies. So this is what we call digital craftsmanship. So we were thinking and we were reflecting a lot about what is the correct scale and how small scale can bring innovation. because actually one size doesn't fit all. We need to consider what are the contexts when we are making. And in this case also, what we're saying is that we can repair, restore, and hack tools. We don't need to create everything new. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We can also fix the wheel. So we think that bringing together the craft, the digital fabrication and new technologies, but also industrial machines, we can intersect and create appropriate technologies that they are accessible, that they are innovative, and that can be also shared between peers. So lab-to-lab research means that we exchange our knowledge with others. And when we are talking about open innovation, and in this case, when we are building machines, we are talking about specific open source hardware, like making tools and making artifacts, where we have open design and we can have the tools and the machines that they can be replicated. So and you have the variety of components. So you have this free and open source hardware. We can see that there are many different initiatives. And this page actually is interesting because it is a lot to do about building equipment and machines. So you can find from farming tools in the farm hack to biology and science, open science tools, to machines that they recycle plastics, so precious plastic, and also all of these people that they are trying to, like Appropedia, that they are trying to bring all of this knowledge of appropriate technologies for sharing knowledge, because we believe that sharing knowledge is the way to bring innovation. So in our little wool factory, we try to think and to see how the different processes, which are, we are not industry of wool, we are not farmers, so we don't really know exactly what are all the processes. And for sure, we maybe forgot some of them in our trajectory. We are not specialty, specialty is not in the value chain of wool, but this is a flow process that is very, very interesting, because it also shows the circularity of wool, because wool can be completely recyclable, and this is made from WAG. And what we want to show you today is the processes that we can do from the farm to the fiber, to making yarn, to making fabric, and then making it circular and closing the loop. So we try to identify the wool journey, and first we have the farm. So we have all the things that they are related to directly the sheep, the shearing, the cleaning, sorting, breeding, scoring, carding. And then we have the making yarn. So we have the carding, spinning, blending, and many more processes in between. Then we have the processes of designing with the yarn. So weaving, knitting, felting, tufting, and then the circularity, closing the loop, how we can disassemble, how we can shred, how we can chemically recycle, and also what are the innovations that they are happening in the closing the loop part, like a chemical extraction, biomaterial making, or even using wool that cannot be used for insulation or other reasons like composting and mulching. So this is a small wool journey. Of course, the people that are here and the people that they are online, most of the times they will get the wool, maybe not so clean, but they will not be in the part of breeding, of being closer to the animals, and of being in the farm unless you are in a farm. So, and in this context, at least, for example, for the ones that they are in Barcelona, we know that we are more on the aspect of design. So we do not have a clean and clear connection with where the raw material comes from and what it takes to make this material, no? Because we are, when we normally get the yarn. So the first step for the curious ones is actually to build a relationship with the people that they are at the farm, with understanding the farms and the sheep, and to get to know the cycles, the time, because nature has its own time. And to understand also that there needs to be some kind of mutual respect and also some symbiotic relationship between the nature, the animals, and the people. No? So when we started our research, we did a very nice visit at here at Terrassa Museum. And for the ones that they are visiting Barcelona or they are here in Barcelona, we totally recommend to go and visit the Museum of Industrial Heritage in Terrassa, because they have more than 2,000 square meters exhibition of all the processes and the history of wool. So for us, it was very good to understand which are the processes. And here you can see a very nice, very fat sheet in the picture, where you can also see how you can start like understanding which are the different parts that you take the wool from. So let's start. We will start with the tools, because today all the session is for making tools. So actually, we wouldn't be using the loom, or we wouldn't be using the spinning machine, but we would be making the loom and the spinning machine. So we start like one step before. And we start with the first part, because we are very lucky to have together with us in She Makes Transfer Labs also a farm that is a lab, which is the farm lab. And we will start with the first part, which is the shearing, sorting, and scoring. So you can see here some tools, some manual tools or automated tools, and then the sorting tables where you need to put the wool and you need to clean it, which is a quite tedious and manual process. And I will let you with Sylvia and Martin so that they can tell the story.
So hello, everybody. Welcome, at least digitally, to the Farm Lab here in Austria. You see a couple of videos that were made, I think, last year or this year. It's a mix, actually. So since we are a small farm, we don't have the knowledge of shearing the sheep ourselves yet. And we are not the only ones with this, let's say, issue in the area, because the local sheep keepers usually have like between 5 and 10 sheep. So getting the equipment, etc., is a bit too expensive. But and there is a group of shearers from all over Europe. We call them the nomadic shearers, because they come in the season. They bring their own equipment. They are a group of friends. They stay at each other's places, and they go around from farm to farm to shear the sheep. And they are super skilled as well. And for the first time, we last year, was it? Yeah. We actually collected the wool, because up to now it was more a problem, to like a side product that people usually don't know what to do with. And we collected it, and it starts with, as Anastasia was mentioning already, cleaning it. So the quality of the wool starts already on the pasture. So you need to make sure that your animals are healthy, so they are less dirty. They have to have a clean environment, so they're not getting like all muddy and dirty. But then also in the shearing process, They start with cutting away everything that is not really usable, and then the sheep gets kind of, I was about to say naked, but sheared, and we put the fleece on a mesh where we do like a manual cleaning, like taking out the bits and pieces of hay or straw or whatever is there, and then it's rolled into a bowl, and like a bowl we bring it to the next process, to the mill. Exactly. So on the pictures here you can see one very cool detail, which is on the right hand side, the shoes. So in the middle you see our shearer. He's if he's not shearing nomadically, he's up in the Swiss Alps taking care of big flocks of sheep. And in the right picture you see his shoes. He explained that these are special shoes that allow him to feel the movement of, so they're very soft, so he can feel the movement of the sheep, so he can actually work with the sheep and using kind of like an extended sensory, which is his foot. And the design of the shoe is made over centuries, I guess, to allow him to do exactly that. So yeah, this is it so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Of course, for us, it was very interesting also to see that the job of a shearer, apart from the story that Martin said that there are these nomad shearers that go from one place to the other, that this is a very serious thing. There are shearing contests, and there is this documentary that is coming up, or movie, I don't know, it's a trailer, which is called She Shears. So I would recommend that you have a look at that as well. I will not play the video. And so after we have sheared and sorted and cleaned and scored, so here we are already passing many steps, huh? Because we will not be able to tell you all of the processes. It's so extended, no? So we go to the carding, and carding is combing. It's mechanical process of putting the fibers in parallel, creating a continuous web. And here you can see an old tool, which is a swing of called the wool picker, for carding the wool and making the fiber like be in parallel with each other. And here the taxonomy is as following. On the left, you see the hand carding and blending, which is the manual, which is, we would call it small. In the middle, you see the drum carder, which can be either manual or automatic electrical, which would be say that it is the medium scale. And then on the right, you see a cottage carder, a big carding machine, which would be the scale large. So in all the presentation that is following, in all the different processes, we will be talking small, medium, large. And we want you to reflect on which scale you want to be. So here you see small hand carding, it's manual process. You can do it individually at home. Then we see a drum carder, maybe it can be a laboratory, it can be somewhere where more people can work. And then you have a cottage carder, where maybe association of people can bring together their wool and use this kind of machinery. So let's hear from Martin again about the carding.
I let the video play first and then explain it. So yeah, here you saw that yesterday, Lucia, hello Lucia, she's here in the audience actually, was, oh, hold on a minute. Okay, well,
You can go ahead.
I switch around. So I explain you what you see here first. And so 2 days ago, actually, we went to Erika's Woolwerkstatt, which means wool workshop. And she's a woman entrepreneur in the Alps, up in the east of Austria. And she couple of years, I think 5-6 years ago, started investing in machinery because her hobby, which was felting, and which she did on the farm, selling hats and shoes and all kinds of produce, which she did manually. But out of a back injury, she decided to invest in machinery. And she found this second-hand carding machine, which is a gigantic, beautiful piece of of machinery. And what you saw in the small video before, with the 1 or 2 drums, you see it here. So the wool comes in like uncombed flocks into the machine, and then over a whole array of drums, which have these needles on them, the wool is straightened and put in parallel. She has a scale on the end of the machine, so she knows exactly how many grams of wool is rolled onto this drum at the end, where you see in the second video. She cuts off the fleece, because what she's making is duvets. So in the next video, you can see that she has these wooden frames that go onto a CNC controlled stitching sewing machine. So she puts the fleece between 2 layers of cotton, and can choose from a variety of patterns. And the machine is computer controlled, stitching it together, not sewing it together with the fleece in between. So mainly alpaca in this case, but this is how you can imagine any duvet making process. So here we are clearly talking about already big machines. So it really fills a room. And in the previous video, you saw our first encounter. Lucia was so lovely to come over to the farm lab to show us her drum carder, because we want to design one and make one and open source the plans for CNC milling. But we had to try it first. So it's a different story once you had a machine in your hands and you understand the little details of how to process it. And yeah, here are some impressions again from the carding machine. So this is two scales of carding, the drum carder being medium. Actually, Erika told us that she started like that as well. She had her drum carder and made felted products for markets, etc. And the next step was already this. So yeah, that was the carding bit.
Okay, thank you, Martin. So after carding, we go to spinning. So from the fiber, we want to make the yarn, and we want to twist. So spinning is a twisting technique, and the fiber is drawn out, twisted, and wound into a bobbin. And here we can see again the small, medium, large. So from a drop spindle that you can make manually to a spinning wheel, or you will show also a few other wheels and machines too, to a big spinning wheel, so big industry. So we try to be somewhere in the middle. We are not small, we are not medium, we are not large, and we are trying to define this scale. So I will let Shannon from Geneva on Fab Lab to talk to you about drop spindles.
Hello, everyone. So drop spindles. So the first few experiments we did with drop spindles was during the fabric gathering of Fab 16 in Paros. This was an idea made by Luce from Var, and it was this. We use CDs and rubber band rings that you find in like plumbing, and you just have a hook on the top. So the CD would be the weight. And compared to other spindles where the weight is at the bottom, this was at the top. And what was great about it is that you can take it all off, put it in your backpack, and it's all foldable. So that was kind of our first test. Then going to the next slide. Thank you. So then, can you still hear me? Uh-oh.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, I know you can still hear me. Perfect. Okay, I will. Okay, there seems to be a problem, but if you can hear me, that's fine. I can make it out. So this was an experiment with 3D printing, doing do-it-yourself 3D drop spindle 3D printed. So the way I did it was the file was with collaboration of Luce again and Var, who made the file. We just 3D printed, which takes like an hour. And the same kind of process was to just take a dowel of wood, just take a hook or a piece of wires, and then just put it at the top, and then assemble it all, and then you have your spindle to make. On the next slide is, if I'm not mistaken, is a drop spindle of how does it actually work? How does it work, a drop spindle? And so if you are doing this experiment or you want to do it at home, you can follow these steps. It's on the presentation. So just to go quickly, it's just like take a little knot at the bottom, tie your wool, and you have this two process. One is to pull the fibers of the wool, which is going to separate so slightly. And then the second step is to twist the spindle, and then do hence repeat. And then when you're going to start to have a very long piece of wool. So so then you can just wrap around your spindle. And after this, if I'm not mistaken, sorry, I can't see my screen. My whole laptop has frozen, so I'm guessing. Is it the one? And we also did another drop spindle with the laser cutter, which was done by Var. So if you don't have a 3D printer, you can go do with a laser cutter, which is again just creating this weight to then do it. I finally got my thing back. Sorry about this. Yes, and this slide, which is the one before. So after you got your twist, which is you can all twist it with a Z direction, which is on clockwise, or you twist it on a S. You can see for the two image which direction you can go. And you then ply your wood, which is to make yarn, you need to have two threads together, if that makes sense. Otherwise, it's going to undo itself. Then you make it into this kind of knot. You wet it with cold water. You kind of get a big whip, so it kind of freezes together. And then you let it dry, and then you can put it into a spool and then start knitting. Yeah, the one on the right was my first attempt. It's very big and small, but I really like it. It has character. And I think the next one is the one with the laser cutter. I apologize again for technical issues. And there you go. Here's the Var one. So here you can see the different ways you can make a drop spindle. So or using the 3D printers, or the laser cutters, or with a normal CD. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. So from these two things important, the direction of spinning, clockwise, anti-clockwise, the ply if you want to make more to join the yards, and then that, yes, you can make the drop spindle with almost any kind of technology, even manually, like it's a piece of wood and a stick, so it's very easy. But then in the medium scale, we talk about spinning machines. And here we have, in the medium scale, we have 3 examples. And the first one is the ELO Studio. ELO Studio is going to present the machines that they have developed. It's an electrical spinning machine, open source, so you can make it. Then there is the electric eel wheel, which is also an open source US-based machine. And then we have the version 2 of the ELO spinning machine. I don't know if Natalia is joined and she would like to present.
Yes, I am here, Anastasia. Nice to see you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for joining us. And I will give the words to you and that you can tell us about the ELO Studio.
Yes, welcome. Very happy to be here and to follow up on the process you just saw. So I'm Natalia from the Berlin-based studio ELO. And we are a studio for textile innovation that was established by me, coming from a background of trainings, innovation, and also product design. And my partner, Sara Diaz Rodriguez, who is not here today, and she's from the field of textile design and research. So we always say our mission is to create playgrounds for independent yarn production. So we are developing, on the one hand, tools, open source tools to create your own yarns. And on the other hand, we use these tools to teach innovation, to teach yarn design, to teach research with them. And I'm going to show you a bit of our evolution and an overview on our machines. And I would need Anastasia to click for me. Thanks so much. So in 2015, we developed the first open source textile spinning machine, or yarn spinning machine, sorry. And we have been iterating. So on the left side, the white one is the very first version of 2015. Back then it was out of wood, but it's very hard to rebuild. And it was the first prototype that evolved out of my partner's master thesis on how to create your own yarns. We are now running in a 3rd iteration, and we just published it last year. It's the black one on the right side. And this one is also the one that we are currently having on GitLab. So we are testing and iterating further and further. And it was even now standardized by the first open source hardware standardization, which is called DeanSpec. And yeah, we are currently developing a lot of them. I'm very excited for that. And along with the machine, we do have also software that controls this machine. And I'm going to give you now a little bit more in detail on it. You will see now a video of the recent version. How does it work? You have a sliver. So you learned, you have carded your wool, you have prepared it. It's now a sliver, which is very fine, very well carded. You insert it after opening the machine at the top. You close the machine and you now start the spinning process after also attaching it down at the spindle. You will see it in a bit. And here you see the 2 cylinders working like hands do. So you also in spinning have 2 hands. One is handing out the amount of fiber. The other one is going into a twist, and at the spindle at the bottom, it is collected. And you can see and control how much of the material, how much of the wool is fed into the process. And this is in the end resulting in a thick or thin yarn, and also is about the twist of the yarn itself. This machine, we use it for educational purposes, but we also use it for experimenting with yarn creations, but we also use it for communities where they think of producing their small amounts and doing little production sites with it, and for generally experimenting with innovation and new processes, because we start at the design from yarn on, not of the textile construction on. So if we look into the next step, so this was the spinning machine, and the spinning machine is controlled by the ELO software, and it allows you to digitally control, but also digitally design already the yarn. In the end, on the left side, you would start on the left upper side with deciding if you want to spin or twist. If you want to spin or twist, Then you choose your fiber. We mostly have been experimenting with wool, but we also have spun silk, papers, plastics, any material you can think of, more or less. But the settings right now are very advanced in terms of wool, so I think it's a great tool to start also with wool here. And in the end, you choose your fiber, and then there are pre-settings. I'm too slow, I think. And after choosing your fibers or your raw material, you can decide on how thick and thin and how much twist you will give it. And as I said, it will control in the end the thickness of the yarn and how much there's over twist and how dense and flexible it will be in the end. And this will be for the spinning mode, but then there's also twisting mode, and the twisting mode allows you to feed in 2 existing yarns that you have created maybe in prior with the spinning mode, and then combining them. So you can create fancy yarns like boucle or anything you can think of. And now coming to the next slide. We do also have a much lower version, because what you've just seen was a rather digital approach in spinning, where you don't need to have any handcrafts, because you more or less use the software and the machine to create it for you. And this one is a cool tool for getting into spinning. It's the e-spinning wheel. And we use it often to get a first experience and understanding on how to spin yarns. So you do it by hand, but you have a motor that takes care of the spindle. So you're really focused. You don't need a foot or anything. You just like focus on your hand gestures and movement and can learn on how to create yarn by using your hands. In the end, when you use your hands, you will also understand the further machine, the more advanced machine, because this is just a translation of the hands, the cylinders in the machine itself. And I want to give you now a short overview on some projects that we did already with Fab Labs and Fab Academy. Anastasia, would you click further? I'm not sure. Anastasia? Thanks. So here you see a DIY process of the e-spinning wheel. We did it for the first time in 2018, back then also with Anastasia at the Fab Academy, with a lot of very interesting designers who went there for a few weeks, and we built it ourselves. The process of, let's say, 3 hours, and a bit of crafting, and in the end it can create things like, if you go to the next slide, Anastasia, like this. So this is a project that was coming out of it by Lara Campos, Be Grounded. So while spinning wool, she inserted, for instance, in the wool little seeds that she later on as a yarn, constructed to a textile surface, watered it, and then created this beautiful texture of growing material. Another project that we did was last year online, where we also made super good experience. So we do a lot of online trainings as well. I mean, due to COVID, everyone does. And this one was a really fun one for us, because that was the part, like the time where we were during the standardization coming up with a new machine, and we tested it with a lot of different Fab Labs, and it was a 3-day online workshop where in the end also really cool video was produced by Leon on their process themselves, and where we built it from scratch, but the ELO spinning machine, the new one. And another recent project that we made was with it was part of the She Makes project in Berlin now a few weeks ago. There we did a 3-day workshop at the Textile Prototyping Lab with different student groups, where we on the one hand developed, you can see it on the left side, and built it with them, the ELO e-spinning wheel. So the e-spinner, and gave a short introduction on how to use your hands. And then we had 2 further stations where we on the one hand focused on spinning techniques, and then on the other one on techniques for twisting yarns. And we on the right side also made a really cool quiz. So it's not only about wool, we also, as I said, experiment with a lot of different fibers. I think this could be silk, not sure, from the image. And yeah, we were also just going into more detail, like deep dives on what materials are currently used, which make sense, which are sustainable, how do they feel differently, how do they behave differently when you spin it, because wool is a very easygoing one, it's a very long one, it's also a local one, it's very nice to card and recycle, it's natural fiber, so it's a very convenient one. But we also want to look into different other, maybe old materials that we have, from flax to I don't know what, and try to also explore there. So I know that is the context of wool here, but we're always looking for more use cases and more people who try and hack the machines as well with new other materials. And on next slide, you can see a few of the outcomes. On the left side, you see one of the students spinning by hand at the station. Then you see some gray and pink twisting of yarn. You see a very beautiful examples of other twisting yarns. And then we had even a small hand loom and created a textile surface. If you want to, we have a few more examples also on a bit more advanced use cases and textile samples on our website. So you can check it out there, and you can also find links to GitLab on the website itself. And yeah, if you should have any questions, reach out for us. And I hand over to the next step.
Thank you, Natalia. Thank you so much for describing the spinning. Give me a second, sorry. It was a very nice experience to be able to make a workshop between the Fabricademy nodes in parallel, everybody making the new ELO spinning machine. And also, if I think that it's a very great opportunity to learn at the same time that you are learning how to make yarn, you learn electronics, you learn mechanics, you learn programming, you learn interfaces. So it is very integral knowledge that you can get by doing this workshop. Thank you, Natalia. Thank you so much for taking the time to present. We're very happy to have you today with us, because many of the labs have made the ELO machine, and it's always the most important to hear the story from the master, you know, from the original source. So
yeah, very happy. Thanks a lot for inviting. I'm very excited that you're all also playing around with the machine and testing and advancing it. So thanks a lot also to the community. We're very happy to be part of it.
Thank you. So let's hear now a little story, because since we said also about the events that we hold within the SheMakes, let's hear from the Icelandic Textile Center, because it is also one of the SheMakes labs. And as you may know, or maybe you don't know, in Iceland there are a lot of sheep. So I don't know if we have connected Margaret.
Yes, I'm here. Can
Yes.
you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Great. Yes. So in the beginning of May, we did like a little wool factories workshop at Iceland, and because in Iceland we know a lot about the wool, and there are many sheep farmers, and it's actually a very like popular material to work from, like knitting, sweaters and stuff, but many have kind of like gotten away from the process of making it. So it's actually moved just to the big factories. So it was nice to invite people to see kind of the process of making yarn. And what we did was use the open source Hilo machine. And what was happening was that we didn't have a working motor. So by thinking in solutions, we actually used a drill to make it spin. But what we did was we just started preparing the wool, like color mixing it and carding it. And then we were spinning from it. And it was very nice that the participants actually coming to the workshops were textile artists and textile teachers. and also sheep farmers who also wanted to get to know the process a little bit better. Because what they do, they shear their sheep and then they send the wool away, but they don't really get to know the whole process. So they were very interested in learning how to spin from their own wool with a small spinning machine. So what was amazing to see actually in this workshop was the knowledge exchange happening among textile artists and sheep farmers. So I think everybody got something nice out of it.
Thank you, Margaret. Like now they hear the interesting point is to hear that the farmers, they just give the wool to the factory and they don't really connect with the process afterwards. And the designers, they take the yarn or the wool, but they don't connect with the farmer. In this case, in the Icelandic Textile Center, there is this nice mix where the farmers and the designers, they were together and they were doing this workshop. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you.
So after we have taken the yarn, there are multiple ways of processing this into fabric. And today we are going to talk about only a few of them. And of course, if there are people in the room that they want to contribute in this open research, they can also tell us more. In this case, we are talking about weaving, and weaving is very, very old, and it is very important in the history of technology. Because first of all, as two words that we want to keep from weaving, it is the warp and the weft. And this is because you have perpendicular fibers and you interlace them going up and down. So you weave them, and you have the one that is in the length, it is called warp, and the one that it is in the transversal, it is called weft. So it's very important weaving in the history of technology, because it was in the first early industrial revolution that the textile industry got very much into technology. And we have the first mechanized loom, which is called power loom. And then we have the famous jacquard. And jacquard was this inventor that in 1804, he invented this automated loom that was using perforated cards that are called punch cards, which is the principle of computers. So actually, weaving technology made computers happen. So we have this mechanism is probably the most important weaving innovation, but also technological innovation. And then with these punch cards, you can have unlimited varieties and complex pattern making. So, and here you can see also one image that Lucia White gave us from her archive, from the archive from Slovenia. Thank you, Lucia. Thank you for your contribution. And again, you have small, medium, large. In this case, we are talking about small loom, medium loom, and large loom, but all in this case, they are manual. There is no jacquard loom in this. And this is the reason why is, and here you can see a step-by-step tutorial of how to assemble a medium loom, because when we were sharing this information of the files with the other labs, some of the labs told us like, it's not very well documented. Can you make a tutorial so that we know what to do? So here it is. This is for Redu, that they asked us to make a better documentation for the medium loom. And sorry, and in the you have only this because we didn't find any open source weaving jacquard machine. There was one that was called OS Loom, but there were no files. So in the open source hardware domain, there is no open source automated weaving machine. So that's what we want to say here. There is a gap, maybe opportunity for people that they make open source machine to take over this and fill this gap. When afterwards we talk about knitting, and knitting is different than weaving because we have one continuous thread that makes loops from left to right and creates stitches. It can be either flat, like simple, or it can be tubular. And these loops are interconnected. So normally you have also this stretchability, different stretchability in the knitted garments. And when you make small samples, this is what you call them swatches. So this is a swatch. And here you have, again, small, medium, large, from finger knitting, because you can do knitting with your fingers, to the knitting needles that you may all know. Then we have a nice machine that was in a platform called Kickstarter, that is called Knitterate. This machine was on Kickstarter in 2019 or 19. Actually, the first prototypes were done here in Fab Lab Barcelona. So Gerard developed this machine, but it was very difficult to make this functional. And he was in China. He was producing there. He was ready to ship all the machines for the Kickstarter campaign, and the machines, they didn't pass the tests, or they failed. So all the production went somehow, all the batch went bad, and now he came back to Spain, to Catalonia, and he's manufacturing the machines here locally. And his experience was that it's better that I go where I know the things, even if it's more expensive. So he's producing these machines here, and they are not still available for the public. And then you can, these are desktop machines, no? So these are for laboratory. It's not big industrial scale. It's something that you can have at your desktop. And we don't say that you can have at home unless you are really dedicating into knitting and this is your profession, because we always propose that equipment is shared in these spaces where we can share knowledge. So then afterwards you have the industrial ones. They are all computerized. So with just an image, you can make any kind of pattern you want. And there are two nice brands. One is called Machuya from Japan, and the other is called Shimashiki, again from Japan, I think, I'm not sure. But in the knitting world, there is something that is more interesting, which is the hacking of old knitting machines. And we said in the beginning that you don't need always to make something from scratch. If you can restore, repair, or hack, you can also take old tools and put them into function. And this is what Becky Stern did with a machine hack of Brother, computerized Brother. It's called ElectronKnit. And she connected this to an Arduino, and she revived all of these machines that they were going to trash by putting a new chip, which is electronic, very easily open source. Many people in the Fab Lab network, they know what Arduino is. And she made this hack so that you can use the computer to directly create the different patterns, images with an old knitting machine, the ElectronKnit. But also there is IAB. IAB is a software with Arduino Shield that they developed a shield, like again electronics, where you can also computerize with software. You can computerize and make laser cut punch cards. So you can create new patterns by putting the punch cards inside the old machines. And this is very accessible because it's an old machine, just that you need to hack it and put electronics so that you can use it with your computer. So totally recommend it. Here we have also open source tubular, circular knitting. And this is the circular knitting project, all 3D printed parts and made in a Fab Lab. And here you can see this circular knitting machine is very easy to make, and it's using a specific needle. And these needles, since they are not producing anymore the old knitting machines, they are obsolete. So you cannot find the needles anymore. So this is a little bit problematic, and this is what happens when technology becomes obsolete, that we cannot find pieces to repair things, no? And so what they did is that they made this model in a parametric way so that you can change the height of the circular machine, that you can put different needles. And you can not only put only one needle that you cannot find to buy anymore. And this is called parametric design. And, lately, as I was doing the research, this is just for fun, and I'm finishing now, and with the different tools and machines, but I found this very nice YouTuber, which is called Mr. Innovative. And he makes all of these different machines that they are tiny and small and mainly using all Arduino, and you can always find the source file. So this is a braiding machine, and braiding machine is it's super important machine. All your laces of the shoes, all the cables that they are inside this fabric, when we want to protect them, all of this, they're using braiding machines. And you see that it's very easy to make. It's super simple. I'm sorry. Yes. And the same guy, he also made two other tiny small machines. It's called Electric DIY Lab. He's using also these components from Arduino. So he's sponsored by Arduino, like the screen and everything. And he makes this little machine for winding. These are tiny, yeah? And another one which is rope making, so twisting. You can put how many meters you want, and like 3D printers, but for making yards. So you can see. So then we have the felting, and felting is non-woven. So felting is when we are matting, condensing, and pressing the fibers. And we can also use recycled fibers for felting. It is providing as a mat that is fire retardant. It can be used for acoustic panels, and it retains liquid, fluid in large amount without having the feeling of wetness. And we have 3 types of, we have again the small, medium, large. So you can do by needle felting. And this is very nice because you can do 3D objects by hand, or you can do by wet felting with water and soap. And here you know probably the old like socks. This is very easy to make. And then you have again needle felting, but automated. This is the felt loom. It is a machine with many needles that it actually presses and creates a felt very quickly. You can see it here, a felting mat. So that's for the felting. And of course, we found 2 open source tools in this research. One was a little gun. Actually, they sell it on Etsy, and we didn't find the files, but we invite the ones that they can design to make it. It's super simple. It's just a little gun with a DC motor and the needles. And then there was this Chilean project, which is called FILT. And it is an alumni of Fabricademy that made this in collaboration with Open Textile Studio. But unfortunately, you cannot find the files of this machine either. Then we have the tufting. And tufting is making, you know, probably making carpets. And you need a base, and you insert the thread on a primary base. You can have 2 types. One is when it is putting the thread and cutting, and the other is when it makes a loop. And when it makes a loop, it means that if you pull it out, everything will come out. And you have the loop pile and the cut pile. And here you can see again the small, medium, large. You can have some kind of tufting with a punch needle by hand. Then you can have a tufting gun, and you can do by hand the tufting. Or you have automated industrial scale tufting robots, where you have this huge, you can see the scale here, we are talking about huge carpet, and you load the file, and then the robot has this rotating head that tufts everything. As we position ourselves in the space in between, and we want to be in between the medium and the large, so we did a workshop with IAC students and the robotic experts of IAC faculty, and with the master students of IAC, and we put a gun on a robot. So we didn't go to the industrial level because this machine costs more than 100K, but we bought a gun, which is 200 euros, and we put it on the robot, and then we can automate and design in the computer with that. So now we are going to the part of closing the loop, which is very important, how we can make our processes circular. And we need to reflect, and we need to understand what can we do when we design. Can we design for disassembly? Can we shred the materials? Can we mix materials that they are not the same? If we mix them, how we will be able to take them apart? Understand that the recycling has challenges and processes, and what are the tools needed for optimizing circularity, and how, very important is because most of the time the wool, it is not all the wool proper for garments, and not all the wool proper for carpets or other things. So there is a lot of loss in the first stage. What can we do with that? How can we use it? Because at this moment, they are burning it, they are incinerating. It is a problem. So when we make it circular, we can talk about post-consumer waste, we can remake, resale, we can change the mindset, we can repair. And then we can also talk about mechanical recycling and chemical recycling in the material system. So you have three worlds here. One is the material that you have in hand. The other is what is the social status, and then what is the culture and the mindset of us. This is from the Center of Circular Design. And also there was a very nice PhD research project of Catherine Hall, where she really makes a graph about the recycling process of wool. So what you need to do to sort, to clean, to pull, to blend, to card, and everything needed. And designed for the same research that she created this graph for recycling network. It's like a framework. So what are the processes and what you can get out of it? What is also the value that you get? No? So how will you be downcycling or upcycling? And then we also have like shredder machines. Here also we can use the precious plastics shredder for shredding the fabrics, but also some very funny bicycle that unknits, like funny machines. And how we can actually transform the low quality wool and the post-consumer wool into something. So if it comes from the farmer, probably you can use it as insulation or like soil blankets and additives and compost. You can make extract lanolin, keratin from wool. So how we can reduce, reuse, and recycle, so how you can take back the materials and put them back in the manufacturing cycle, and also the use of water. What do you do with the wastewater of the wool? So how you can really optimize the processes. Of course, there is a lot to learn from the industry, because all industries are mandatorily going towards sustainability and minimal waste. So they have optimized their processes. Last but not least, basically, when we are talking about making open machines, we first need to understand how machines work. So the best is what Martin was saying, that we invited Lucia to bring us a drum carder, so then we can also see how it works and we can make our own. Then you need also to understand what you need to know, if you need to know electronics, if you need to have wood workshop skills, if you then to practice, to redesign with open source philosophy, to adapt, develop things that they are already there, because some people, they can find open source material and they can contribute. So if you find some tool that has been there and you want to make it and you make better documentation, you can give back to the open source, no? And then for me, personally, the most challenging part of open source hardware is how to document. Because we say also in Fabricademy, if you didn't document it, you did not do it, so it's not existing. And it is also very difficult to understand that you want to communicate with people that they are not at the same knowledge, they don't come from the same background with some mechanical engineer or some other, and you need to communicate in a very simple way. And I would say that IKEA is very successful for that, because they managed to make these manuals that everyone can assemble their furniture. So in order to document, we would recommend these 7 steps. First, like to make a BOM, bill of materials, to understand what are the costs, put some data sheets if you have components, design the blueprints, the drawings, the schematics, the assembly guides, split the process into step by step so that you can have an overview of what is going to be needed to be done. Also, like if you go and you want to start weaving, you don't know how to weave, then it's better that you have an overview that you need to do this first and this, then after and this. So then you know, you don't go blind to the second step. You can have an overview of that. Use formats that they are universal, open formats like PDF, DXF, STL, not use proprietary software. Very much importance to take pictures in white background and make step-by-step instructions and GIFs, create videos and upload on GitHub or on GitLab, because there people can contribute. So if someone makes an improvement of your open source invention, they can fork it, they can contribute, and then all the history is registered there. So now I will stop sharing my screen, and I hope that I didn't tire you. And I would like to go around the labs that they are participating in the event. And I would like to hear from you. What are you going to do today? Let's start from the Green Fabric in Belgium.
Hi. So today we put all the little wool factory that we have spread in the space. So we have almost everything that you talked about except felting. So we have the drum carder, hand carder, drop spindle, electric eel wheel. We built also the hero machine that we hope to domesticate today. And we also want to test, because we were talking about the IAP software with the knitting machine. Oops. And so, because we saw a guy in New Zealand, he was using the knitting machine with the punch card to actually make a jacquard with weaving. So we want to try that as well, because we have our weaver with us today. And I hope I didn't mess up with this. So yeah, so the goal today is to kind of test a bit of all the tools that we have here.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next, we can go to WAG in Amsterdam.
Let me see if I can do this without. Hi. How do I change the camera? Yeah, just to show some of the machines we have here. Here's everyone. Hello, everyone. We are going to be doing a lot of carding. We have hand carders. We also have blending mats that you can also do for carding. We have over there 2 drum carders, one of them fully manual and another one electric. And we are also going to be spinning using some of the drop spindles Shannon showed. We already have some carded wool here and a lot of the beautiful, colorful wool we did last Monday. And that's it.
Then we have Redu.
Hi, I hope you can see me. Today we will play with the looms, small looms that we have from the Code Lab, and the medium loom from Fabric Academy. We're now starting to put the threads on the looms, which are different sizes. We also have round ones, which give us some difficulties. We really enjoyed and wanted to do this activity because it's traditionally wise, it is something, it's about our heritage and all of our grandmothers and mothers, but mostly grandmothers used to have a big weaving loom in their homes or work with a lot of wool. So today's for us is more for a process of learning, even for ourselves, which we have a bit of experience, me and Elvis, but we're still noobs in this field. So this could be fun. So I think that's all about Redu. You can see us on the big, we also have a big camera. So yeah.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. So I will show you first what we're going to do here in Barcelona, and then we will go to connect with Jordan Amman. Just give me a second. So here we have the Little Wool Factory. We have the first station is sorting and cleaning here. So you have different types of wool, and you have the carding mats and the winding tool. Here we are also coloring some wool because, of course, this was from the previous workshop, but we thought that it would be nice to have it. Here we have the spinning part. So you have the 2 ELO version 1 and 1 ELO version 2. Then you have the weaving station. So you have medium weaving, one that needs to be assembled because it's about making machines. And then we have the small ones that they are also gifts for the participants. Then we have the station of felting and recycling. So here we have some recycled felted wool from a company in the UK that's called Cloud Wool. And here we will do some wet felting technique. And here we have a manual knitting machine. We have some knitting needles and some punch needle. And then we have the examples of the tufting. And here we have the robots where we can, we have assembled the tufting gun on the robot, and we are tufting on the, so you always tuft from the back, and then you can see from the front that is the design. And now I will go to Adriana to hear from Jordan. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Anastasia. I am in TechWorks Amman and lab also that is hosting the Fab Academy. I just want to give the voice. Actually, Ishraq is not here. He's actually now in New York, exhibiting a prize around wool, and I really heard a couple of days ago about her work, also in machines, and a very tremendous experience also around the problematic about wool here in Jordan. Therefore, we just want to shortly introduce her and her experience also with the machines that she has now. I just will give you the floor, Ishraq.
Thank you, Adriana. Hello, everybody. I'm physically in New York right now. And I had done a lot of work when I was still in Jordan. I began as a textile artist and weaver. I learned Bedouin weaving using the primitive Bedouin loom. That's the flat ground loom. and people started asking me, you know, do you weave with Jordanian wool? When I went to buy Jordanian wool in the market, I couldn't find any. So of course I started asking questions, you know, why don't we have Jordanian wool? Why don't we process it in Jordan? And so of course I embarked on this, you could say, a discovery of, you know, our heritage in terms of processing the wool, but also why nobody is involved in processing wool, and ended up processing quantities of wool myself, beginning with very, very basic to no tools, using, you know, our hands, and also the traditional ways. I've documented the ways that people used to process wool. I've washed quantities of wool in places like the Ma'in hot springs, the hot waters of Ma'in, as well as other springs, and then, you know, produced quantities of manually processed wools, and then started to slowly implement some of, you know, the more industrial, global industrial processing practices, which I've learned when I became trained as a wool grader in the US. And one of the things I started doing is bringing small tools that I can fit in a suitcase, such as the drum carder behind me. You know, it's from Brother, the brand. And so I started looking for tools that are affordable, that I can bring in a suitcase as opposed to ship to Jordan, because I discovered that we have a lot of difficulties shipping, ordering things, you know, shipping them to Jordan because we don't produce them locally. And so it had to be something that I can bring in a suitcase. And so I started to slowly work from very, very primitive ways to process the wool by hand, to adding these small scale tools that I brought into my studio, you know, starting with the drop spindle that is used by the, you know, people of the Middle East. This particular one you can buy in the market in Jordan. It's made in Syria. And then, you know, same thing with the hand carders, you know, that you find in Jordan, and then slowly improving on them. In terms of the spinning, I moved from the drop spindle to the electric eel wheel, the 5.2, which I brought to Jordan in 2019. And I used it myself. I don't have it physically with me. It's still in Jordan right now. I also brought the electric eel nano, little mini ones, which at the time were part of his Kickstarter campaign. And I also gave it to the Bedouin women who have always used the drop spindle as a way to spin wool. For example, I've spun, you know, with them quantities of the yarn with the wool that we've processed by hand. And then I introduced the electric eel spinners just to see how, you know, they see improvements, you know, to get feedback from them. Is this making the spinning process easier, and so on? And so, you know, throughout the process, I've collected or created this archive of materials, all made from our native breed of sheep, which is the Awasi sheep. In terms of the tactile qualities of it, and also the micron measurement, it's on the coarser side. It's about 30 plus micron measurement. And so it's not appropriate, for example, for the garment industry, but it can be appropriate for a lot of other industries as well. I can show you, for example, I started also working with local dyeing initiatives in Jordan, where I started washing, processing quantities of wool, giving it to different people who dye, you know, using natural dyes. These were made, these were processed and then given to somebody who used cochineal as a natural dye. And here you can see it's one raw material, but because of how I processed it in different ways and also left it at different phases of the processing, you know, this is washed, carded batting, and then this is a single ply. So it's been spun on a single ply with the drop spindle. And then this is two plied. And so dyed in the same natural dye, but in different concentrations as well. So you start to create this sort of variation of what is essentially the same raw material. It's just never been seen in all of these different variations before. One of the other things I did was I carried a quantity of our unwashed Jordanian wool to New York and sent it to a processing facility that's on a small scale, similar to Erica's workshop that we saw in the beginning of the lecture. And so I had industrial yarn spun with our native Jordanian wool. This also has been dyed in the cochineal at a very, very light concentration. I wanted to compare the tactile qualities of our same exact breed of wool when it's processed by hand the traditional way and then industrially processed. And sure enough, sorry, I have all the samples behind me. When we touch the two types of yarns, it really feels like it's almost a different type of wool. And so I concluded that the way we process the wool can affect its final quality and visual and also tactile properties of it. And so I continued with this sort of self-designed research, always along the way. At any stage, if I feel like I've produced the type of material that I can employ in my personal design work, I usually apply it. And so I've been able to use a lot of these materials in artworks, in commissioned products for clients, but also I've been able to go back and sort of work in the art at the art scale, like a large installation art scale, where I was able to utilize my weaving practice, as well as this idea of reinventing old tools. I created a large-scale weaving installation using the basic Bedouin floor loom, except I closed it so that it's a circular closed warp loop that the weaver can sit inside of and be weaving while the warp was circulating around this sort of frame. And so for me, my design practice has been a going back and forth between this material research of our native wool, applying it to the tools I was using, and then applying it also to art projects and finished products as well. In terms of felting, I was able to also, again, use some of the quantities of wool I have in New York. I found somebody who has a felt loom nearby. I live in an area that has a lot of fiber agriculture up in the Hudson Valley, so it's outside of New York City. And so a lot of people are involved in doing all sorts of things with animal fibers. And I was able to create a felt sheet using felt loom, right? So I wanted to also see the different visual and tactile quality of dry felting versus wet felting. And for me, trying different tools that I can get my hands on, again, you don't have to go to a large industrial scale to be able to produce materials. It just really depends on the quantity of wool that you're working with. And so, this is made with the felt loom. And so, you can make it as thick as you want. I started with using, the hand held felting needles. And of course, it always starts small, and you just sort of expand when you discover that the advanced large-scale tools are literally an exact expression of the most basic primitive tool. It just kind of goes up in scale and has to adapt based on the quantity of wool that you're working with at a time. And for me, that also became a very, very interesting part of what I was doing, is always thinking of the tools and the scale, how you scale up your operation. I was able to get a wet felting roller machine from the brand The Gentle Roller, that's in Australia actually, because for a while I understood the concept of wet felting, and I started researching, machines that can just make your work go faster, right? And so I discovered that there aren't a lot of brands that make these machines at a scale that's appropriate for a small studio. And finally, I found a few, and I kind of did more research and read reviews and decided on the one that I decided was the most affordable for me. And sure enough, it was about $2,000. I paid for it and I had it shipped here to my address in New York. And now I have a felting roller machine that is about 140 centimeters wide. And so I made a sample like this on it, So this is a sample of wet felting. And I find that there's really an interesting industry happening where you have people who aren't necessarily large producers. They're not in the big mega industry. And all it takes is an understanding of what really needs to happen in terms of while you're making the felting, while you're making, you know, the spinning and so on. And you just need, you know, smart people to kind of think about how to scale up, you know, from the manual basic tool all the way to the scale that you desire, which is something that can be fit for a small studio, and also similar to what you all are working with at your different Fabricademy locations. And so
Exactly. I mean, this is, thank you. It's amazing to see practice in the studio, no? And all of these experiments. And the thing that you're mentioning now is also the thing that we want to reflect on. What is the proper scale? What is the scale that fits and what is the context, no? So this exactly what you're saying is the most important. You say sometimes they don't make the machines small enough for being in the studio, or then it is too manual. And how we can define this little full factory? Let's define it together, no? Thank you, Ishraq. It was very, very interesting. It is now a moment to let the people play. And I hope that you can also play and we can be connected and in parallel making things. I want to say thanks to everyone that watched us online, and I want to stop the live stream on Facebook. And now in the labs, in the different labs, because this is what we have as lab-to-lab research, many places simultaneously doing activities and learning together, we will kick off the workshops. So we will come back at some point around 6 to say how it went, and enjoy everyone.